Okay, and welcome to the long-term effects of training. So these are the chronic adaptations that take place. So the long-term things. So over a number of weeks, what changes within the body happen to make us better at doing sport and make us become fitter? Okay, so we're going to look at it a few different ways. The first one is we're going to look at the cardiovascular adaptations to training. Now, there's lots of different types of things that can happen here. And the easiest way of showing these adaptations is in tables. So for this one, we're going to look at the adaptations on the left-hand side, and then what happens at rest during submaximal exercise and during maximal intensity exercise. Okay, so we've got an increase in the left ventricle size. That basically means that the chamber of the heart gets bigger. All right, so it becomes bigger so it can fill with more blood. Now, because that chambers get bigger, that leads us to the next adaptation. That's the stroke volume. So that's how much blood can be pumped out of the heart in one beat. So if you've got a bigger chamber, you get a bigger amount of heart pumped out of the heart in one beat. Okay. Cardiac output is how much blood comes out of your heart in a minute. Okay. So if we're pumping more blood out per beat, we don't have to work as hard. All right. To pump the same amount of blood. Okay, we only need, say, 50 millilitres of blood to do a certain amount of exercise. We still only need 50 millilitres of blood to do that certain amount of exercise when we're fitter. It's just that we deliver it in a different way. All right, we deliver it in 5 beats or 5 pumps of the heart rather than 10 pumps of the heart. Okay, then we have a few other things. One of the ones I'm going to look at is increasing hemoglobin. So hemoglobin's the part of your blood that carries oxygen. So we become better at transporting this oxygen from the lungs to the muscles via the blood, via the hemoglobin. Okay, and one of the reasons why this happens is because, one, we get more hemoglobin actual cells, and the next one is the blood volumes increase. So we get a better quality of blood and a slightly greater amount of blood available at our disclosure. And the next one, the AVO2 difference. That is our body's ability to extract the oxygen from the blood. Okay, so the AV means artery, vein, basically. And it means how much oxygen have we taken out in that middle. So we've got artery, capillary, vein. So how much have we taken out in this capillary bit? So if we've got 21% of our blood is oxygen in our artery, it goes through our capillary, we extract some out. What's the percentage in the vein afterwards? So if we go from 21 to 16, we've got an AVO2 difference of 5. If we go from 25 to 16, we've got an AVO2 difference of 9. So we've become better at extracting that oxygen from the blood. So the heart rate goes down. That really should be up with stroke volume and cardiac output. Heart rate goes down because it doesn't have to work as hard to pump this blood around, because we're getting more blood out per beat, and we become better at utilising the oxygen, so our heart rate doesn't have to work as hard. Knock-on effect there is blood pressure can go down. I'm not going to go through all of these adaptations, but some of the key ones that link into the aerobic profile assignment that we're doing is the size of the heart changing. Okay, so our heart becomes bigger and stronger, so the left ventricle, the stroke volume, and that increasing, the heart rate going down, which gives us a greater capacity for work, and the increase in hemoglobin, so we become better at taking the oxygen out of the lungs and carrying it to where it needs to be. All right, so key things there to remember are the heart getting bigger and stronger, stroke volume increasing, cardiac output during maximal intensity, hemoglobin levels going up, increasing your AVO2 difference, and your resting and your heart rate going down. Now we're going to look at chronic adaptations to our respiratory system. Okay, so we've got, first of all, tidal volume. So that's how much oxygen or air fits in our lungs. So the size of our lungs in each breath. So that's my tidal volume. Okay, per breath. My minute ventilation is how much comes out in a minute. Okay, so that's kind of like the difference between our stroke volume and cardiac output when we're referring back to our heart. So our lungs become bigger, and we're able to, during maximal exercise, get more oxygen into and around our body through our lungs. Then we've got diffusion of O2 and CO2. We've got an increase in that, and that happens for a couple of different reasons. First of all, we get an increase in alveoli. So that's the air sacs within our lungs where this oxygen diffusion and carbon dioxide diffusion takes place. We get more of those. And around those alveoli, we get greater capillaries. All right, we get a greater capillary density around the alveoli. So that means we get more places where oxygen can sit when we breathe in, and then more blood going past that and next to that, so the oxygen can be taken out of our lungs into our bloodstream. Okay, this gives us a bigger VO2 max. Key point for our aerobic profile assignment: the increased VO2 max, the amount of oxygen that we can take in and utilize in a minute. So that's a real key indicator of aerobic capacity or aerobic fitness. All right, then we've got our respiratory rates. That goes down. We don't need to breathe as often because we are getting a greater amount of air in our lungs in one breath. We become better at taking the air out of the oxygen out of the air in our lungs, and we become better at utilizing the oxygen. Okay. Now we've got our muscular adaptation to aerobic training. So there's a few things that happen here, and we're going to go through some key points to do with that assignment. We've got an increase in capillary density. Start that again. We get an increase in capillary density. That means that we have more places where we can take the oxygen out of the blood and put it into the muscle. All right, so we're going to be able to use this oxygen that we've worked hard to take in and transport. We get an increase in, I'm going to skip that one. We get an increase in myoglobin, and that's hemoglobin's kind of twin brother. It's the bit in the muscle that takes the oxygen. So we've got the oxygen's being carried forward by the hemoglobin, and in the muscle, the myoglobin grabs the oxygen and takes it into the muscle. That's the myoglobin's job. So we become better at taking that oxygen out of the bloodstream and the capillaries. All right. Then we've got mitochondria, key word for us when it comes to our aerobic energy system. This is where we process the glycogen and triglycerides using the oxygen to produce ATP. We do this within our mitochondria, so there are factories for making ATP. Now we get more of them, and they become bigger in size. So we get bigger, better factories and more of them to produce ATP aerobically, so utilizing this oxygen. We've got glycogen stores and triglyceride stores. That's our fuel sources. So the glycogen that goes into aerobic glycolysis, and the triglycerides, that's the fat supply that we can utilize as a fuel source to make ATP within this mitochondria. We have an increase in ATP stores. All right, so we are in the muscle here. We've got a certain amount of ATP stores. Now, if we're getting bigger muscles, which we're going to do, they're going to get bigger and stronger slightly. It's got a greater capacity to hold that ATP within there before we even start using the glycogen and the fats. Then we've got an increase in slow twitch muscle fibers. So slow twitch muscle fibers have got a high density of capillaries and a high density of mitochondria, high density of triglycerides and glycogen. So they're the types of muscle fibers that we do for lower intensity exercise, but we can do it for a long period of time. All right, so our aerobic training effects would be increased capillaries, bigger and better mitochondria, more myoglobin to extract oxygen from the blood, hence giving us a bigger AVO2 difference, more energy supplies, and a greater quantity of slow twitch muscle fibers so that we can do that aerobic work. Then we've got muscular adaptations to anaerobic training. So this means short intensity and short duration, but high intensity types of training. Speed work, high intensity interval training, weight training, that kind of stuff. So what happens to our muscular system here? We get an increase in muscle size, right? They become bigger, they become stronger. The number of myofibrils within the muscle, so if you think your muscle is made of fibers like that, okay, now imagine that I've got 3 sets of hands and all these are myofibrils. So we've got a greater number of actual individual muscle fiber types, okay? We get a greater number of fast twitch muscle fibers as opposed to the slow twitch that we get from aerobic training. These fast twitch muscle fibers give us more forceful and faster contractions of the muscle. So they work a lot harder and they become more powerful. Then we get increasing glycogen stores. So remember that we're going to use glycogen as our fuel source for the lactic acid energy system. To produce ATP using this anaerobic glycolysis, we still need glycogen. So we've got bigger muscles, which means we've got the capacity to store more energy stores, so the glycogen and the PC and the ATP again. Those are some of the anaerobic and aerobic adaptations within our body. If there's anything in there that you don't understand, so some of the terminology, have a look on the brianmac.demon.co.uk. I'll say that again slowly. brianmac.demon.co.uk. Have a look at that website, and that helps you to get a grip as to what this terminology actually means. Google it. Have a look on the net. Find out what they mean. Start to put yourself together a little package or a vocab list so you can get used to using these. Hope this helps, and remember, don't forget to subscribe.